says start. Okay. Hi, I'm Kathy Chadwick. And we are here for our book discussion.
My name's Haley Ortega. I'm an art teacher. I've been teaching for 7 years, and I have never been in a book club.
I am Candace Untrine. I teach second grade in Georgia, of course, and this is my first book club as well.
Hey, I'm Reagan Elder. I also teach second grade, and this is my 7th year teaching, and this is also my first book club.
Hey, I'm Laura Woodard, and I teach 3rd, 4th, and 5th special ed, and this is my 19th year of teaching.
I also teach special ed. I teach 4th and 5th graders, and this is year, oh, no.
They all run together.
It's a lot of years. It's more than 10.
And I teach littles. I've always taught littles. So I was at a PK through 2 for the first chunk, and the second half has been with a traditional PK through 5. So littles all the way.
Yes.
All right.
Well, we'll go ahead and discuss the Amy Herman TED Talk, Lesson in Looking. One quote that I found really interesting that she said in the beginning was, looking closely can save a life, change your company, and even help you understand why your children behave the way they do. And that was just something that really spoke to me as a special education teacher and having students with behaviors, like, giving them more than just, the at face value. There might be other things going on that's causing them to behave and react the way that they are. And then, like she was saying, taking the time to learn more about individual students can impact our teaching practices.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to look through lenses to see what we've been missing all along.
I thought that her example from medicine and law enforcement kind of drove home how observation literally saves lives, and what are we missing every day in the classroom.
Yes,
And
I also noted that about the police officer, how he was able to just read the body language from that, and just really like her way of explaining the looking versus the seeing. Like at the beginning, the grandfather clock got me. I thought it was a clock with a sheet.
Yeah. I had no idea it was a single piece of wood.
Well, that's like tying it back to just from an art perspective, the idea of really seeing something, not just looking at it passively, but seeing it. And other readings that said that over and over. There were a lot of themes that were really repetitive in that TED Talk and in all of these readings, where it was emphasis on attention to detail and really seeing something, not just glazing over it. Like I think in my notes, not necessarily for the TED Talk, but related to the idea of really seeing something, is that whenever, you're on a drive home from work, everything just, you don't remember the drive. You're looking where you're going, hopefully, but I cannot remember point A to point B until I pull in the driveway and go, oh, I'm home. You see that you're home. Yeah. And so the distinction between the two for me as an artist was really, really relevant. I could really relate to that.
Also at the picture with the train coming out of the fireplace, it was just different, just like hear somebody mention what's not there. Because like when you look at something, you're automatically just like, okay, there's a train. But like until she said there's no tracks, that's not what we first pick out, is we don't see what's not there.
Exactly.
I took a note of how she, like you said, she was sharing examples through the use of the paintings, like how they can reveal like our unknown biases and our assumptions, and just kind of like taking a step back and kind of thinking like one of my questions was like, what biases might affect how we interpret what we see, and how can we become like more aware of them? So it can like translate to like what we're talking about, like art and paintings, but also just like any moment of any day, like how we're looking at our kids around us, our students around us. It was, it was one of those kind of like mind blowing, like oh, I need to reevaluate moments.
Mhm.
That kind of
Like-
goes with what the cop I think said, that he would like the painting with Jesus and like, oh, he's like creating the problem, like that. Just I feel like kind of goes with that.
Mhm.
It's how you see it.
Perspective.
And then the way that she had it said to ask questions about what you see, like there's the 4 A's. You assess it, what's in front of us, you analyze it, what's actually important, you articulate it, and then you act and make a decision. I thought that was just
And
you
mhm.
just don't think about things like that, but just really looking at it and analyzing what information is valuable or important.
That's kind of how we use data in our teaching, you know,
Yes.
the whole process. And it's
I think the other part of that for me, like just graduate school in general, the majority chunk of my undergrad was all art, and until I got to student teaching. So which now they don't structure programs that way. Now you can't get an art ed in 4 years. You have to go do 2 years of education to go teach, period. So
Mhm.
the way that they structure it now is different, and everything that I'm learning now in grad school, like speaking of being able to articulate it and gain something from it, I didn't have the words for the educational things I was doing when it could take the art content out of it, like observational assessment, whatever, insert whatever educational term you want to insert. Like I didn't have the words or the affirmation or confirmation that I was doing those things until I got into graduate school and was given the words for it. So like that, our kids, same way, like being as young as they are, they can't articulate it. They haven't been given the words for it. So there was a lot of things that in that I was like, okay, well, speaking of that, I'm like a squirrel, so my brain bounces around. And like you said earlier, just because it is relatable, I find it relatable or interesting doesn't necessarily mean that someone else would find it from that same perspective. So I was just thinking about how I didn't have the words or couldn't articulate exactly what I was doing as a teacher until I got into my master's and were given the words for it. And our kids are the same way, teaching them social emotional regulation and all these things that they don't have words for is a big part of our job that's completely separate from the content, like giving kids a voice and teaching,
Giving them a lens to see things in different ways and
making
have you
them,
considered this
look
perspective?
or see it, versus just looking at it, and making them see that big picture that she kept mentioning. That's important for especially, I know we focus on that when starting new units, making sure your students are understanding the big picture. Why am I teaching what I'm teaching? What is it going to do for them? How does it connect? It's just kind of goes together.
Mm-hmm. And that all ties into the discussion question that I had come up with. What are our students telling us that they're not actually telling us? And I mean, like you guys were saying, just the different things that they don't have the words for, like what are they expressing and telling us with those things?
Exactly. Okay, so we're gonna now switch our mindsets and move over to the educational connoisseurship and criticism, their form and functions, and educational evaluation.
Okay.
One thing that I found really interesting in this article was that it just appears that we've constantly been on a hunt for the best practice or the best method. It seems like everything that we found or that we have is changing every 3 to 4 years.
Yes.
There's programs, curriculums, I'm trying to like apps, that educational apps that students use, that you like use and then they take it away and say, oh, this is better. For example, just this school year, like I've been using Lexia in reading. I teach second grade. Lexia, I love it. It works with their, foundational skills, but we're getting rid of that because the new program that everybody is calling the best is Amira. So now we've switched over to a new reading program, and new testing, and it's like
Mhm.
we've been using Lexia, it works. So it just, that to me was just interesting because it's like, I don't know, I guess the way the article, talked about it is we've always just been searching. Like nothing is great.
Mhm.
I put that, everything is data driven. Like there was a point about evaluation. Everything that we do is data driven. I'm assuming the switch to Amira has something to do with the data.
Mhm.
If a curriculum doesn't increase the student scores, or if they think there's a newer method, then they just put that new curriculum in its place. And I know I mentioned with you all, but like I've only been teaching for 6 years, and I've gone through many different programs. So I just found that very interesting that it's been like not just a recent thing, but like it's
Forever.
been like since the beginning. And then something else that I found interesting, it was on page 141 of the article, but how the difference between or like the relationship between dinosaur
Connoisseurship.
and criticism, sorry. So like how it's so private, but criticism is so public, but then you have to have connoisseurship to have criticism. It was just like confusing, like, and interesting to see that you have to have one to have the other, but then not have one to have the other.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I just thought that was interesting. But then I kind of ended it with like a discussion question. Like, how can we as teachers balance our professional judgment? So, like, what I feel is best for my kids with the need to meet all the standardized testing requirements.
That is almost the same thing as what my discussion question was. How I'm just going to read it to you just so you can hear the similarities. How can we focus education on learning rather than testing while still keeping our principals happy? Great
One thing I
minds.
guess, like, and I know as someone that's not a gen ed teacher, right? So like I don't have the perspective that you guys have with being in the curriculum, but I do see it obviously, and I'm talking to my I've been at the same school for 5 years, so it's talking to teachers and going, oh gosh, we're going through this other shift, and oh, we're going through this shift now. And I think part of the talking about everything being data driven, like that is important. But one thing that stood out to me, a quote that he made was that he emphasizes that by hyper focusing on the future, we're sacrificing the present. So we're not seeing what the positive things that are happening as a result of, like, what are you looking at? Like, what? I don't, this data that's all important data. Like,
that's what I hate, because everything is data driven. So we're always looking at what our next test scores are going to be. And I'm like, can I celebrate my test scores now? They might not be where you want them, but every student has growth. I want to celebrate the student. Like, I get the data part, but I focus on the student. So I like do rewards in my class nonstop to try to like show them, like, you gained 20 points. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's like the bar is unreachable. Like it's the future bar is just here, like, like it's nothing that we can do, or no program that you will find, or no nothing. I feel like that's why it's never good enough, because it's like, how much better can the future get? Like, you can't, you're missing what's right in front of you by looking so far ahead that, and I'm not even in the classroom, and I can see that. Like, what are we doing? We switch programs every 2 years. The teachers figure out how to teach it, and then you say, "Just kidding, new one."
Well, I feel like they give you like a goal, and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna reach this goal." And when you meet that goal, they're like, "Oh, sorry. Now that you've met this goal, we got a new goal." And I'm like, "Let's go."
And this one's so much better than the other one.
Right.
Yeah, makes no sense.
I wrote down that I found his idea that teaching requires artistry is pretty powerful, because it reminds me of how much is not in the script. There's so much that we have to teach our children that can't be scripted, and it's not a standard that the state wants us to teach, but it's something we have to teach, and it's something they need. So we have to go off script.
And that's where they explain it as artistry, but then in a sense, or like, but you can't be an artist by yourself.
Exactly.
There's
Mhm.
this, and this. I'll give you your tools, but you have to be an artist on my terms.
Within the
Exactly.
box, you have to stay in this box, but the point of an artist is to go outside that box. So I can't do both. Yeah, like there has to be more autonomy than there is. And like you said, there's a lot, Laura, in our job description that's in between the lines, that's unwritten, where it's like every teacher knows that if you go read that job description, it does not reflect your job.
And a lot of those things take a lot of time, and but we're always under pressure to keep moving, next standard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Amira today.
These things.
We were on the Amira bus.
Something
too.
different tomorrow. Yeah.
And how do you become experts and connoisseurs when it's constantly changing like that?
Mhm. That's a great question.
You can become a expert for a year and then
Yeah.
relearn it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
I
I was
feel
just
like
gonna, sorry, I was just gonna add that like what stood out to me was also that he, talked about this mindset that we have where it's like we're instead of being in like the present moment, like you guys are talking about, it's all these like different future goals and like and also like we don't take into experience or like take into account like the experiences that you have to go through before you get to that point. And then I like the part where it said that this mindset is promoting uniformity over individuality, which is like so contradicting, I feel like, to a lot of our like we're trying to at some points, be more I don't know, like including like STEAM and including more like art forms and include like, but then again, it's like which way are we going? Because like that kind of learning, the student-based learning and all that how it probably should be is not, what we're doing. It's like it's very contradicting, like what we do and like kind of like what he's talking about, like we know what we should be doing, but again, like you guys said, it's all about the data and all the test scores and
it takes out the hands-on, the creativity part, and
the
I don't
fun
know,
stuff.
a whole side note on it
right.
is that I got in the conversation one time, and that's why sometimes, it's harder with the gifted testing. I know that's so beyond the point, but in the classrooms, we don't have the creativity aspect that they used to incorporate in the project base. Like we used to do more of that, and now it's just pacing, test, standards.
Yep.
Focus on it. You're all the same.
Yeah.
Which also like leads to the dimensions. It really is like it all goes together.
I was going to say my question real quick before we moved on, because it kind of ties in what we've been talking about. Mine was, in what ways can educational connoisseurship help us recognize those subtle forms of student growth? So I feel like his whole point is that, we shouldn't be talking about just these big future goals, but kind of like what you were saying, Candace, just like nurturing and like giving credit like every step of the way. And like what more can we do for our students to, celebrate, those small wins and things like that. And that was kind of my, like, I know we all do things, but it's also like we can only do so much. But I don't know, I was just kind of thinking about that, like, don't want them to get so much in their head, in elementary school about state testing and everything, but it's hard not to. But
no, and that I think is the biggest thing, is just trying to celebrate everything. Like my county does a time drill, so you have to have 54 math facts in 4 minutes. And there's some students who just never get to that. So we set personal goals. So if by the end of the year they meet their personal, I celebrate that. Now, the data still does not look great for the county because they didn't meet it, but they met their personal goal. And I feel like that sometimes is more important for that person. So
That's basically what I tell my students, is that their goal is to beat themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mhm.
that's the only person that they need to be competing with. And
Mhm.
when we do that, we celebrate.
Yeah, and we always try to get them to beat their last score, even
Yeah.
if it's
Mhm.
1 word per minute. Oh, you showed growth,
Yeah.
so let's celebrate it.
Mhm.
Exactly. I say that every day. One more than yesterday. You got 19, get 20. That's
Mhm.
just it. Like
Mhm.
that's all you need. Don't worry about everything else. Because I feel like they put so much stress on themselves. They beat themselves up, and that's the last thing we need is our students shutting down.
Well, and I think that's a
Mhm.
large part. Like my discussion question for that particular article was, do you agree or disagree with Eisner's perspective regarding the negative impact the industry of standardized testing is having on education?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. All of that.
Yeah.
That is what it's doing to kids.
We just
Mhm.
answered your question without knowing your question.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like we did that earlier too. I'm trying to just so you guys know, I've evidently left my computer charger for my school computer at school, so I'm trying to switch over to my personal. So if there's another notification for me to join, then it's me. It's just because this computer is gonna die.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and go next then, Haley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So for the enlightened eye, looking at the prologue, introduction, chapter 1 and chapter 4, I just kind of took notes on each part. The beginning part, it seemed like it was just kind of talking about how Elliot Eisner has just made such an impact on the way that we look at teaching in general, and how his legacy, reminds us about how we should, like we've been talking about, focus on the small things within our students and paying attention to them and noticing the human, emotional, artistic side of teaching and learning, and not just the chasing the test scores pretty much.
Mhm.
And I really like that he pushes back against, measuring education. It said like a science experiment. So he's pretty much saying that the real understanding comes from exploring meaning, context, and experience. So I know we've all taken, these classes in grad school about qualitative and quantitative. We all know.
Mhm.
But that was brought up in chapter 1 with, what is qualitative, and it's about the people. It's about listening, watching, looking at expressive language too, body language. Um, and with chapter 4, I'm jumping all around and just kind of, going over broad, what it was talking about, and then we can dive deeper. But and then chapter 4 was going back into the educational connoisseurship and noticing the subtle stuff. And then it talks about the 5 dimensions, that, intentional, structural, curricular, pedagogical, evaluative. And the one that stood out to me was the curricular dimension. I took a quote: "One of the most important aspects of connoisseurship focuses upon the quality of the curriculum's content and goals, and the activities employed to engage students in it." And what stood out was also to make judgments about the significance of content. One must know the content being taught and the alternatives to the content within the field. So it was just kind of like, I was thinking about how, we've been talking about all these resources that are given to us, and just like, this is what we're using, without really, giving us the chance to really see what else is out there. The alternatives, like he's talking about, like comparing what works best for our students, because, it's not a one size fits all. But yeah, I just kind of went all over the place, but that was just what my basic takeaways from each part.
I like what you mentioned though about the curricular dimension, because honestly, I have the exact same thing highlighted, because the way I was looking at it is I feel like the people who are making the decisions for curriculums are not teaching the content. So that's where, like, when it referred back to, to make judgments about the significance of the content. So to tell me if it's working or not working, you must know the content being taught. And I don't feel like, sometimes I just think like, you've been out of the classroom for so long. I don't think you know how is it working, but you're making a decision on it. So I love that you quoted that, Reagan, because I haven't like
That's
started.
funny. Yeah. So.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna pull out like from this, from the introduction, there was just how we mentioned artist before, in a previous article. It said, I put, Eisner says that there are multiple ways in which the world can be known, putting artists and science on the same level as knowers. And in a sense, it's kind of confusing to me because you're saying we're artists in science, but science is always like, the truth, like the real thing. And art is something extra. Like art isn't, so like, how are you going to say that something is the truth? Like it was like different hearing, him put them on the same level. Cause then I questioned it. I said, it made me wonder, what would school look like if we treated creative and artistic knowledge as equally important as the science side of it? Like, what would that look like? It was just interesting to me.
I'm trying to find the page where I saw this, but I can't find it, and I didn't write it down. But the idea of aesthetic knowledge, that learning comes through the senses, emotions, imagination, and it's not just cognitive. And I think that hit home because I teach special ed, so it's not always going to be cognitive, and they do know so much, but it's not always here, that, we all bring our own perspectives, and they do have knowledge from that.
Right. One quote that stood out to me was that qualitative inquiry is a product of intelligence, and the ability to do such inquiry can be fostered through education. And that was on page 16. But as teachers, we can teach our students how they can dive deeper into a topic and guide them on their journey and guide them as they question various things, as they research and they explore and they learn.
Going off of what Candace was saying about how like we're teaching a certain way because that's how we're taught and that's how we were taught. And it's like, if we want to go about, going and including more creativity, I know like personally, I would love to. And I really struggled, like when I was working in Savannah, they were really pushing for STEAM, which I really liked the idea of it, but it was really hard for everyone because we're so, our teacher brains are so like set on teaching a certain way, and we don't have enough practice with like, teaching students in this, more student-based, hands-on learning way, because we've always done it we've always done it that way. We've always had workbooks, and we've always had like timed math tests, like you have, like it's just like we want to be this certain way, but I feel like it would just take such a drastic, like they would have to completely like change how we go to college, like how they teach us to be like I don't even know what that would look like, honestly, because when I had like a little bit of it and I was into it, I think that takes, you have to be willing to kind of change too. But like, I struggled with it. I don't know. I think it would be great. I think it would be like, kind of what, Eisner's talking about. But I don't know how the change would happen or what that would even look like. But I agree, it would be great. I just don't know how, like.
Yeah. No, and that's where I like think of, I feel like for it to be effective, it's like you can't just start right away. Like I'd say maybe in 4th or 5th grade. I feel like it has to be rolled out like from kindergarten to 1st, because even like the one thing I really try to do, because like I said, I feel like instruction has not been hands-on. It's not creative. Fridays, I really try to like make it a fun Friday. We might play a bingo addition game to go with addition, you know, like just something. But then because that's so new for the kids, like it's so different, they can't, like they get so excited and it makes it harder because they're like loud and off, you know, it's just fun for them. So they don't see it still as educational. So it's so hard for me to try to be that teacher that brings in the STEM part of it where, you know, it's all hands on because we struggle. That kind of answered my question though. I kind of said like, how would classrooms be different if we did put art and, you know, art ways before that? And that goes like with what you said, Reagan. It's, you know, how would it look like?
Ability services and accommodations.
My question was, how can we create more meaningful experiences when we also have to stick to those strict timelines? So it's very similar. Like, you know, they just get off task when we try to do all the things, but
when you find an answer, please let me know.
Yeah.
I know, right? Anyone.
just let me know. Let's see. Haley's trying so hard.
Okay.
I let her in.
Okay. Sort of.
Oh, you might want to close out of one of yours because we're
Here, I'm gonna
mute one.
Try
Right
now.
there.
I muted my other self, but like this computer's gonna die for some reason. My video is not, I don't know, but let's not waste battery power. But speaking on the arts portion of it, one thing that stood out to me about the reading was, like you said, how Candace, in the past, art and the arts and humanities and other subjects have been very divided and considered lesser than because it is so subjective, right? That truth is not there because it's your own truth. But incorporating that into the rest of it, you know, a large part of what art is a reflection of humanity, and is science and the world we're living in not also part of that? So, you know, so there's a lot. I'm taking the STEAM class right now that, you know, I'm getting the flip side of it. You know, everybody else in the course for the most part is not, I don't think there's another art teacher. And so it's like a learning curve for them pulling in the art, and it's a learning curve for me pulling in the other things. Because it's easy for me to see how everything else around me is embedded in my content area in art, but it's not so easy when you're on the other side, when it's not the world you're in. And like a large part of why I think some points in Eisner's work, like everything that we've read, is that he's coming from a perspective of someone that was very engrossed in the arts and has a background in both. And so he has a really unique perspective and a unique way of writing and a unique way of identifying, like, yeah, what if we did this? Like, it's not such a novel idea. Like, people have done it, you know, the Renaissance and things like that is when all that kind of, that pinnacle of all that was together at one point, and then we all lost it. You know, so yeah, a lot of this chapter, like my notes are like emphasizing what he said about the distinction between these two subjects and how what's true and what's knowledgeable has been considered the sciences and other things that were more objective. So
Haley, so as an art teacher, what would you truly like? I mean, just quick, like, what would you think like classrooms would look like if we did put all like the arts first?
The arts first. I mean, I think that
not to put you on the spot, I mean, but
no, I mean, it would look like STEAM. I mean, that's what STEAM is. It's taking all the other subjects and incorporating, pulling how can architects design something that's aesthetic but functional, right? That is art and design. That is art and math and engineering and all those things pulled together. How can technology supplement that? Like marine conservation, one way that that's done is by 3D printing coral reef bases, right? So an artist has to design those coral reefs, and then the scientist has to figure out, okay, how are these other things in this environment going to envelop that and build on that. So it's providing a foundation for the ocean and its environment to rebuild itself, right? So that's like a perfect example of all of those things working cohesively. Like, how can land art in a way for like the spiral jetty? Do you guys know what that is? Have you heard of that? So it's like, basically, it's a piece of art that is made from organic materials and lives in an organic environment. So it is a piece of art that Earth is taking back. It was made from Earth and Earth is taking it back. So like, how can things like that, as an artist, how can I make things like that and work with scientists and mathematicians and people that can help me make it happen and help me understand the environment better and what would be needed to truly give back to it, what's going to be sustainable, like all of those things. I think there are a lot of areas where that has already been considered, but maybe we just don't recognize it. Like, I don't know, solar energy, wind energy, like they didn't just throw that thing up and say, oh, this looks fine. They thought about how it was going to look aesthetically and how those materials were going to last over time and how, all of that stuff. So if we did that in classrooms, it would just be like what you guys were saying, project based. Like, it would be hands-on. It's not teaching them a math lesson and then doing, oh, here's this cool geometric pattern coloring sheet. Here you go. It's using art to teach the math lesson.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. So it's just switching but our whole school structure is structured around this idea of, okay, we're going to teach language. Okay, now switch your brain. Math. Okay, now switch your brain. Like, that goes into the whole
that goes into the dimension,
where it's like
structural dimension.
Our structure of schooling forces kids to compartmentalize these things, forces us as educators to compartmentalize things instead of seeing how they all work. It's there. We just have to see it.
I feel like, Reagan, that is like what you were talking about, though, how for us to truly do it, like, we want to do it so bad, but like we haven't been taught, in a sense, how to.
We're not.
Or we want to do it, but then it's here. This is the new curriculum. You have to teach it.
Yeah.
Well, we're not, not all of us are, when it's talking about art, like, that is like Haley, like art, but it's also like music, drama, like that was all part of STEAM as well. And it's kind of like you have to be you have to be knowledgeable on all of these different, outlets, and we're not, and also science and like, you have to like know vocabulary and like how like things would work and, like I do try to, as much as possible, talking about kind of like intermingling the subjects. Like, I think writing and reading especially can go with like anything that can be found in like math, social studies, science. Like, I like that my school is like trying to like bring those together more so. And so like, at least that's a start, I guess. But like we're talking about, we don't, I'm not, so I was never good at drawing or like anything in that, like facet, like, but if I could teach the students like how, like, I know like an artist, like it's not good or bad, I know that, but like, I wouldn't even know how to teach it.
Yeah, like it is. But even people, I was in undergrad with people who are amazing artists and could not tell you how they got to that point. Like that, there was a point in undergrad where my professors, would say like, oh, well, we would do a presentation, like we would do something that was a little bit less what you would call artistic. And my professor and the classmates, my classmates would be like, oh, well, mine doesn't look, my presentation isn't as good as hers, and I don't present as well as hers, and I can't say it as well as hers. And I'm like, yeah, but also you have an innate talent that I do not. Like, everything just comes so natural. Like, you're going to be able to go and be a freelance artist and commission pieces. Like, that is not where I saw myself. So I think that part of that, understanding that also those of us in the art world, like we have strengths and weaknesses. Like 3D stuff is not my thing, so putting myself on my own learning curve of knowing, okay, I'm going to have to make sure I'm doing some professional development on my end. And like the STEAM, I think the best thing that I ever did was start that STEAM course, because of all the things that I've done in the specialist program. Like that has kind of changed my mindset on the idea of, I never pursued STEAM because, like you said, I'm not a math person. I was never good at math. I took remedial math 3 times in college and I failed it twice. And I swear the 3rd time she just passed me because she felt bad. Like,
well, I think the STEAM is like, there's this big idea that it's this hard concept. And I feel like it is not that hard once you break it down.
yeah, it's just interdisciplinary studies. And now that I know that, and I know that it's just understanding and seeing how everything goes together, I genuinely feel like we should all take those classes, because we do we limit ourselves in a way. And the structure of schooling doesn't help. Like those dimensions have boxed us in, and the curriculum that we're prescribed has boxed us in. And like all of these things keep us in these little compartments or envelopes. Like Eisner said in one part, he said, how do these little envelopes that we've created impact everything else? And that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I was looking at that.
Are
Haley,
we?
are you ready for your you
I
want
think
to
yours is the
jump on
last
into your questionable assumptions about schooling?
Yes, which I think, I swear all of this stuff has overlapped so much.
Mhm.
It really has.
I kind of felt like when I was reading things, I said to myself, didn't I just read that somewhere else? Yes, I did 5 times. Okay, let me get back.
That must be why we had to read all of them together, though, because they really do.
And they
all
reference each other
pull
too.
off of each other.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so yours. Let me pull up.
So a couple points that I made bullet points, so I'll just read through those. One that really stood out was that education aims to differentiate learning, yet expects all students to arrive at the same place at the same time. Again, the structure of schooling, like really pulling from that, the connoisseurship assignment we have after this, or like that's also due, was easier to me because so much of what we were reading, or like the issues that we have, I think are related to those dimensions, like the structure of schooling. And so, just to go off of that, I just said that Eisner compares this to a train track that starts at the age of 5 and arrives to the goal or destination by 18. But what happens to everyone else? What about those kids that should be a grade level or 2 ahead? What about those that needs to stay behind? Like, it's my discussion question is related to that, and says, what would school look like if students if students were to accelerate based on readiness instead of age? Although laws should remain in place, I think, to ensure society is well educated. That's to say, like, you're not in school till you're 30, like there does need to be, I guess, I don't want to say capped, but there does need to be an age limit, or a point where we say, okay, this is where you need to go now. Like, not like high school is done, but you're not ready to go out into the world or to pursue further schooling. This is the next stage, I guess. So what would that look like? How would that change things related to that first point? The other thing is that related to that, not all schools operate the same. Not just nationally, but internationally. How do other models, maybe it might be comparing apples to oranges, like Finland to the United States, but comparatively, is there a model that would work better for our kids that's already being implemented in another part of the world, with a similar population size, or demographic, or whatever, all of those things? I know culture, climate, all that stuff is going to impact how we structure schooling around holidays and, and all those things. But like, just student readiness. Like, I have 5th graders reading on a 1st grade level. Why?
Yep.
Like, I have a friend who teaches high school seniors that are reading on a middle school level. Why are they seniors in high school? Why were they allowed to be pushed through? That's a structural issue that needs to be addressed. And then testing as an industry is looping it back around. Like, that's just another thing, nail in the coffin of like, Why are we still doing this? And Eisner wrote this. One thing that blew my mind was like his work is from when, like the 90s, early 90s or even before that. How long have we recognized that?
It's still relevant today,
Still doing it? Like that there's so much of that though, that in the specialist program, I will say, I feel like the program as a whole has focused on the negative things in education, like the issues, So I feel like a negative Nancy. Like I'm much more pessimistic now than I was before I started. But like, why?
Like
30 years?
Yeah, I feel like the readings though support us being negative Nancy's. Like we have these negative feelings, but then you go and you read, like when I was reading this book, I'm like, it's older, but I feel this way now.
Mhm.
Just like you just said. No, but I actually, Haley, I did the same point for this. Is I said on page 650, the aim of school is to get all students to the same place at the same time. And it just really made me think of my classroom and how we know not every student is the same. I, in second grade, have students reading chapter books, and then I have students who cannot read to me kindergarten sight words.
Mhm.
How are we all in the same group?
Yep.
And it really like bounced to my next point where it said, the best form of school organization is age grading. Like how I read that on pages 650 and 651, but it's like, I never thought like anything differently. Like it just kind of makes sense to put all the kids in the same age in the class, but like if they're that different, exactly, like you just assume it because that's what you're used to, but is that the best? Should I have kids on the level like a first grader and a third grader? If they are reading at the exact same level on this, like everything, why not put them together? Like,
and as a broader picture, like I understand developmentally, like a fifth grader is not the same as a first grader, but on a broader perspective, when they're out in the world, that's not how we do things. I work with people that are 20 years, 30 years older than me. I work with people younger than me. I work with people of different cultural backgrounds, of different socioeconomic backgrounds. Like the world doesn't work that way. Like if our point is to prepare kids to go out and do things, they have to understand, for the same reason SPED pushes in with gen ed. But there are all kinds of people in the world, and kids need to see that. And if I'm sorry, but if you're a fifth grader and you are in the same class as a first grader, you might look at yourself and go, I need to do better.
It could be the motivation they need. They say the motivational factor is, missing, but if you're with somebody younger than you, it could be like, okay, hey, I need to actually do my work. Because I've noticed, I feel like there's sometimes where kids just don't want to do, and it's choice.
Apathy.
Not that they can't do it.
One of his 12, kind of going off of what you guys are saying, one of his questionable assumptions was that competition improves performance. And he's like, no, that can, mess up collaboration, equity, and intrinsic motivation. So it's kind of like when we have all these students in one classroom, it's, and they are on different levels, like, and one group is reading on a kindergarten level and one group is reading on a fifth grade level, like, that, he's questioning if that's going to actually help them intrinsically be motivated. He's like, that is only probably going to make it worse. And I even talking off of Candace, like I've taught kindergarten before, and even when they come to kindergarten, there are like, it's already a gap, even when they come to kindergarten. So it's like, I don't know, it makes you think, what is the benefit of, having it based off of age or having it based off of ability or, having inclusion classrooms, which I'm sure Kathy and Laura, like you guys probably have your own opinions on the pros and cons of having students being in inclusion and not being in inclusion. I think I don't know if you guys have an opinion that you want to share, but that kind of brought an idea to my mind as well.
One of the quotes that stood out to me was where he was talking about how a teacher would work for 30 kids for a year, and then the very next year they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And as a special ed resource teacher, I currently have the luxury of having had my students for multiple years. And it makes such a difference when they walk in and we're able to pick up where we left off June 25th or whatever it was. Like they already know what my expectations are. They already know how the classes run. We don't have to spend a month getting to know you or getting to know the rules and routines. They know me.
You have that relationship with them.
Yeah, and I wish that was a common thing. Like I
Well,
wish.
like as a specials teacher, we talk all the time about how, we may only see kids because we're on a weekly schedule at my school. So, for example, I see a classroom for a week, and then 6 weeks later I restart. So, like every week, I have the whole class, same schedule for a week long, and we talk about how, us specials team, we got like a fresh specials team all at the same time. And so all of us started that same year, our music PE, we started that same year. And we talk about how that, having been there for 5 years now, my first grade babies are 5th graders now. And my room is the same and my expectations are the same. And I've known Billy Bob since he was this little, and it does make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And classroom teachers, gen ed teachers, by the halfway point in the year or towards the end of the year, absolutely they have a leg up on us in that moment as far as like how well do you know the kids. But then they're gone and they're still they see me for 6 or 7 years depending on if they go to pre-K or whatever. And I watched them grow. I watched them grow up in front of me in the course of that time. And it does make a huge difference. And the models that he mentioned where in some countries, the students have the same teacher for their entire primary experience, 4, 5, 6 years. How would teachers respond to that? Like, I'm not a gen ed teacher. How would you guys, that are in the classroom, could you imagine having those kids for the next 6 years in a row?
I will say the biggest pro of that would be they know my routines. Because I feel like that is the hardest thing with a new school year is teaching routines and procedures, because it's so hard I have to constantly tell myself, these are not my same babies from last year. They don't know how to pack up properly. We have to work on this every single day to do it. And I think it would it would be great. Like, I know teachers who loop up with their classes, and I know that they love it. It's beneficial because not only they already have their students where they need them to be technically, like academically. They already know what group they need to be with. They already know, like, they have all of that taken care of, which goes back to that whole age grading type thing is like, if we're not going to separate kids, by ability, and we're going to keep them all the same age together, at least I would know, okay, this is my group A, this is my group C, like that to me would be a pro on it. But I don't know, this chapter really or that book really made me just question, like, why are kids just grouped by grade level? Like what Reagan said, I taught kindergarten as well for 3 years, and half of my students would go to pre-K, half would not go to pre-K. We're already at a learning gap. There's a drastic, you have kids who know their letters and you have kids who don't know a single letter.
Well, I think a big part of that is like, I honestly did not know that kindergarten was not required in the state of Georgia.
Or first grade.
Kindergarten and first grade are optional.
Wild. Absolutely wild.
Okay, so I thought it was just kindergarten. So that's insanity, first of all. So that's a structural problem that we cannot change. Like, as educators, we have zero power to change that, right? That's like legislation that has to happen.
Well, hang on. I think I might be wrong with that. I think it is just kindergarten.
It is.
Kindergarten, I think, is just the optional, but you can come in at first grade.
Gotcha. Yeah. And then pre-K, of course, is like, that's an awful structure because why are you limiting, like pre-K is an option. Oh, if you can get in, oh, like if you can find a program. So then if you're not a teacher, what are you supposed to do? You're like, I want to give my kid this foundation. Let's say you're a wonderful, fabulous parent and so supportive. You're still not an educator. Like you can do your due diligence and do everything you can, but you're not going to get the same foundation as if you were to go to pre-K.
That
So
was a
we fix
discussion
that problem.
in one of my previous courses where it said those that go to pre-K are already like set up to be, I don't want to say superior. I can't think of another word, but like they already have that advantage because pre-K is the lottery and or, you know, it's either you get in the lottery or you have money to pay for pre-K. And not many people have, I mean, pre-K would be expensive, you know. Mine, of course, like because I'm a teacher and educator, they were in pre-K right away. So it's just, it is unfortunate, but I do think there should be something where is if you don't go to pre-K, I don't think you should be in the same level. You know, I think it would be better for you to be in a separate class where you focus on letters and the foundations and the sounds rather than jumping in with kids who know that. And that's where, you know, that brings it back to that chapter of, you know, what is best.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's, again, like I've appreciated these readings and this topic, but it just makes me feel totally powerless. Like, thank you for highlighting all the things that are wrong in the field that I can do nothing about.
Yeah, just add it to the list. Just add it to the list at this
What do
point.
they say? Like email your district person. Just email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, can you fix these structural issues, please?
Do we
All right, are y'all
add
ready
more
for
to
the
the
last-
list? Yeah, go Laura. Add to the
Okay.
list for us.
All right, so I'm going to talk about Ermacher chapters 1 and 2. I'm just going to go through some of my bullet points. I have that the concept of hidden curriculum stood out to me. It made me think about all the unspoken lessons that students learn in school, social norms, compliance with adults and each other. I also thought that, you know, as teachers, we know there's a hidden curriculum because it's a daily reality. We know we're teaching more than just academics, but the powers that be just don't seem to recognize that
No.
ever. But I thought that was interesting. And that curriculum is evolving. You know, it is tied to cultural changes, and it, according to the children that we teach, their backgrounds, it does change what we teach. It does change the hidden curriculum. So, and the question that I had was, how can teachers become more aware of the hidden curriculum in their classrooms, and how can we make it positive instead of negative?
As a special ed teacher, and granted, my classroom is so small compared to a gen ed classroom, but I really truly try to get to know my students. I try to find out things about their life, try to talk to them about different things, and discuss all of that with each other. That way they're hearing that so and so's family is different, but that's okay. And this is what they do for dinner, or after school we go and do this or whatever, just so that they can realize, yeah, there's things that are the same and different about our families and about our cultures and all of that. And I know that that's harder when you have 25 as opposed to my biggest class size right now is 8. In one of my classes there's 4 of them. And again, I've had all of these kids for the last 2 years. But just trying to get to know them as much as I can, honestly.
One thing as a general ed teacher that I changed this year, like, we are supposed to start math like right away, but I honestly take like the first 5 minutes to do like a morning meeting, and like I was scared to do it before, but teaching for a little bit, I'm like, I don't care. I need to do this.
Yeah.
I'll take 5 minutes. Like, it's for the betterment of our class, like we do like for each day of the week, like there's a different topic to talk about, and like, I think it's important, like you said, like just to get to know your kids and, again, it's all encompassing, but, the idea that, to be the quote that I have is to be a connoisseur is to be able to appreciate the subtle but significant. That was the quote that stood out to me for this, which are the little things about our kids,
And I think that really goes back to seeing, not just looking passively, really seeing and getting to know them. Trying to see what my I was able to switch over to the phone, so we're live. Yay.
Does anybody have anything else?
Just going into criticism again, I just have down that criticism is what we've learned through connoisseurship. And when we learn more about a particular topic, it's easy to produce criticism. And it's, like they've said 15 times, it doesn't have to be negative, but as a result, our level of understanding deepens and we're able to break it apart.
I think in the art world and in any world, but especially in the art world, you're putting your heart on a canvas or putting your heart out there, wearing your heart on your sleeve in a sense. So when someone criticizes or has something to say about what you poured your being into, then we take it really, really personally. But I feel like it's the same with every aspect, when it comes to being a teacher, like we pour everything into our whatever. So when we switch schools and have those 6 observations or whatever, it's like, really? Like, seriously? But it's this whole, society has such a negative view of what it is. And I even looked up the Webster's dictionary. Like, that's what I put in there, was like, according to Webster's dictionary of criticism, like, it is negative. It is judgment. It is, what else did it say? It says to judge, to pass judgment upon. None of that sounds positive. You're not judging something for good or bad or whatever you want to call it. It's more like it's growth mindset. It's what can I gain from this? Okay, you gathered this from it. Maybe that's not what I intended for people to get out of that. And I think that's that's just something that's so ingrained about criticism that it is really hard to separate. I mean, we even have a different word for positive criticism, right? Like constructive. Well, if it's not constructive, then that means it must be negative. And even constructive criticism, like when kids in my room, we have standards that address analyzing a piece of art or giving someone criticism or constructive criticism on their work. And that's really hard for kids because they feel like if they're honest, if they're just being their kid self, then they're like, well, that looks, I don't know what that is actually. Then it comes across as really hurtful and it's not helpful. So then we have to talk about, okay, how can criticism be used to help them? So like, I don't know if this is something that I don't have children of my own yet. We're working on it. We don't know if we can have kids at this point, but one thing that I've seen related family and something I would like to do if I am able to ever have kids, and something that my husband and I do, like before we go to bed at night when we pray, is like, what are you, a rose and a thorn, or 2 roses and a thorn, where you're reflecting on like, okay, what are some good things about that thing that you made or that thing that you did, which is still criticism, but we just take it better because it's from a positive angle or one thing you can do better. But that's the part where we always, and our kids, I feel like, always take it really harshly. Where it's like, if we say we need to do it better, that's code for you did it wrong. So I really appreciated his more positive perspective on what criticism is supposed to be, not kind of what we have, we take it for. The only other thing out to me in that work, which honestly, I put on here like this may or may not have anything to do with my professional life, but I definitely feel like it resonated with me personally, was that he made there was a quote that says, as the old saying goes, like I've never heard this saying before in my life. I don't know if y'all have. The fish may be the last to discover water.
Mm.
I had never, like of all of that reading, that was one thing that I said, oh my, like it made me stop and I had to think about it.
That's funny. Yeah, that's so true.
That is us.
Like-
that is so many people in so many aspects of life. Wow.
What a good quote to end on. I love
Yes.
that. Candace, you're muted, girl. Come on, we've
Sorry,
been
I
through
was gonna say, I
COVID.
feel like that's a good stopping point. My kids just got home, so I'm trying to mute because it's 8:30. They're starving.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, I
think we're-
enjoyed this. I got more out of
Yeah.
this than I thought that I would.
Me too.
Uh-huh. Good first
No,
book
I
club,
think it was-
ladies.
No,
All right.
we got it done.
Yes, and I will try and get it submitted.
Thank
All right,
you,
thank you.
Kathy.
Kathy for doing that.
Oh, anytime.
Yes. Do we have
You'll have a great rest of your week.
Yeah,
You
bye,
too.
ladies.
And I guess
Bye.
we'll meet again in a month. I think that's, or not a month, a couple weeks when the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, ladies.
That's
Okay.
good. Bye.
Bye.